Hey everybody, it's Bust, and today we are talking Legends of Runeterra. And so in this video, we're going to be talking about the rotation. I plan on talking about the standard rotation of cards over the course of the next few days. We'll go over the entire list and through each of the factions. But before we touch in on that, I did want to give a brief update on the channel. If you've been watching from our adventures in Balatro or Backpack Battles, Legends of Runeterra is where I really kind of cut my teeth in the content creation space. We've done that for the past 4 years, and through some shakeups at Riot, we were kind of pushed out of that space where they removed Expedition, which was the draft format we started playing, and then they removed the competitive scene, the competitive structure for the game, and it really kind of left it up in the air as in terms of what we were going to be doing. But I do like being in this space of where we're going to do something for about a month at a time. With there not being any real competitive scene within Runeterra, I feel like about a month is what I can grind the ladder before I get tired of it if there isn't some kind of continual and reasonable change. And so I think that what we're going to be able to do moving forward is do about a month of standard, then we'll do about a month of Path of Champions, and then a month of something else, like where we've done Balatro and Backpack Battles for the past month. I look to jump into another deck builder or another auto battler for a month. And then I think that's kind of around the cycle that Riot was looking to use with the game. I think that they said that seasons were going to last like 3 months. I don't know. I can't believe anything they say anymore. And so that's at least the intent for what we're going to have moving forward, is having that kind of cadence of a month of standard, a month of Path of Champions, a month of some other deck builder / auto battler type game. And so, moving forward with the new news of Legends of Runeterra, they've announced the next patch, or I should say the next expansion, the Dreamlit Paths. You got Lux up there in front, and they're supposed to be re-releasing version 2s of champions. I thought that the second version of a champion was supposed to be Yasuo. Maybe that was not correct or it was unclear. We've got Lux on the screen now. There's no real telling if they've reworked Lux for a Lux version 2 or if this is something just tied in with the Path of Champions. Who knows? Speculate as you wish, but April 24th is when the new expansion will be here. Hopefully it's going to function on Android devices. Otherwise, over this video and over the course of the next few, we're going to be talking rotation, the cards leaving, the cards coming in. I plan to cover 2 factions per day. That should get us right around a week and kind of get us right close to that space to where the new set will be released, and there's no telling what the spoiler season is going to look like. So it used to last about a week. Who knows what they plan on doing up to this point. But before we talk about rotation, the other things I wanted to mention is over on the Play Runeterra site, there are a couple of articles regarding the rotation. The big one to talk about in terms of me is the Rotation 2024 preview. This was a very interesting article. I think it was put out here by I Am Walrus, the new senior game designer over there at Riot. He may have held the senior position before the Purge, if you will. I don't quite remember, but a very interesting article in terms of some things coming out, things coming in, and the big things they call out are they're gutting the entirety of the lurk mechanic, they're gutting the entirety of the darkness mechanic, and gutting the entirety of the nightfall mechanic. And in just kind of a general sense, this is very interesting to me. As you look at other games like Magic, Magic releases new sets to where they add in roughly like 1,000 cards a year, right? I don't entirely remember the Magic cadence, but they used to do like 3 sets a year of 350 cards, and then kind of like half a set with the yearly core set, and it put about 1,000 cards into the course of the game. Looking at a game like Hearthstone, it put out, I think, around 500 to where they would have 3 sets a year, and then the sets had about 150 cards in them, and then they put those little mini sets out now. So I think they're around 500. And then Legends of Runeterra, you fell into the space to where they were putting out about 250 cards over the course of the entire year. And so it's very interesting as like mechanics and things get added in, and then you want to do a rotation, the cards that you cut in the rotation, it's tough to get all of them, is where I'm trying to get at. And so I know there was like a lot of disdain towards the last rotation and some of the Nightfall cards still being stuck around, right? I think they left Diana in, they left Nocturne in, and then they left in like Pale Cascade and maybe like the 3/3 Nightfall Overwhelm guy, but they took out like half of the other part of the Nightfall kit and just left this really small piece in. And what I'm kind of hoping comes out of this update to the rotation rotation is that now that more cards have been added into the game, maybe they aren't so stuck and just leaving some of these outliers in, right? Because at the end of the day, if you have 10 factions and you need to have roughly, I don't know how many cards there are per faction, but let's just say 100 cards, right? Given the cadence of the releases and everything, to where Targon has less cards than Shurima, that has less cards than Bilgewater and whatnot, it's kind of important to where if you wanted to keep that balance, then something had to stick around. At least that was my opinion. And so that's why I thought the Nightfall cards were there. I was kind of coin flipping as to whether or not they were going to print more Nightfall support. But it seems like they're just kind of cleaning house on this. And it's interesting to see things like Lurk go. I'm really tired of Lurk. I don't like it as a deck, but if you're trying to get someone new and interested in the game, Lurk is a very interesting deck in that the mechanics are very straightforward. You just attack. If the top card of your deck has Lurk, you get some kind of bonus, and it really cuts away at what I call muscle memory, in the sense that if you're trying to learn the game, there's so many different things that you have to think about that it takes a while to kind of compartmentalize what you need to think about when, and when you can just kind of completely remove from your thoughts, and what you really need to focus in on thinking, and having mechanics like Lurk, which you don't really have to think about it. You just say, okay, I attack and tell me if it worked. It was kind of nice to have that for newer players trying to pick up the mechanics of the game. And so I'll be interested to see if something comes back in to potentially fill in that space that Lurk provided, as to where it's not, challenging to understand how it works. It's not like you're diving into playing Karma Seraphine or something and you need to memorize all kinds of bullshit. It seems just like a very straightforward thing to know. And so I'm curious to see how that plays out. Otherwise, there's lots of interesting things throughout the course of this article. It's very worth a read. Otherwise, the one that's not worth the read is the rotation full list. Like, why this was thought to be a good idea is well beyond me. They just listed every single card that's going to be in the game and put it up on one screen. Like, if you're supposed to digest that on your own, good luck for you. But this was just kind of an embarrassment, if you ask me. But someone put this out. I get it. It's here. If you're looking to get a better visual of what's actually happening within the game, what the fuck was this? What is this? Just stuff I've never heard of in here. Hang on. I saw like I caught a glimpse of something. Hang on. I got to see. Eternal Dancers. It was one of these Shadow Isles cards. Amalgamation of Vile Rites. Is that even in the game? What the fuck is this stuff? This is the one I saw. Aston the Disgraced. What the fuck is that? Hang on. Okay, it's some kind of big dragon. It must be from the variety set, right? And so right after Riot decided to nuke the game, they were like, LOL, we're getting rid of PvP. Oh, here's a variety set and an invitational that we're not going to show coverage for. And so he must have been part of some of that. He must have been part of that variety set that Riot gave no visibility to and just released it during the kind of biggest down period of the game. Nonetheless, moving on, not really impressed with this screen. If you don't want to try and digest this massive wall of text, you can use my recommended format, which is going to the Runeterra report. They put together a very visually appealing way to see all of the cards that are coming in, all of the cards that are going out, and this is what we're going to be focusing in on today. And so we're going to kick it off with the Runeterran Champions. We're going to break it down into 3 separate parts. And so first and foremost, there is Ryze. Ryze is a horribly designed champion. I'm sorry to say that towards whoever made it, but he just has problems all over the place. I was always worried about the deck building component of like Ryze and Jhin. Nothing was completely obnoxious with this include stuff in your deck type mechanic until the Elder Dragon hit. But to me, Ryze was just a time bomb of problems in terms of the deck building aspect of including all of the burst cards at your disposal. Up next, he did not have particularly fun gameplay mechanics as to where just the complete game board stall till turn 7, and if you don't kill me by turn 7, the game is just done, isn't particularly fun for a lot of players. If you're a fan of Mage and Bay, you probably love Ryze. You guys can get together and have a Ryze party, talk about how fun it is to play Concussive Palm over and over and over again. But for the general gamer, the casual enthusiast of Legends of Runeterra, I don't think there was much desire to play Ryze or to play against Ryze. And so at the end of the day, seems like a slam dunk of a removal from the set. Now, the remaining champions to me all tie into that linear aspect that came out of the article from I Am Walrus. And to me, there's two pieces to that. I think that there is the oops, we just kind of have to do it, right? And so Varys and Kayn being within the cultist tags, that's where they have their deck building kind of thing. If you're not going to support cultists anymore, then they probably need to go. And it's just tough to do, right? You know, if you want to include more cats, that's not hard to do, right? Yuumi and Nidalee, completely different champions, but they're both cats. If you want to print a new cat in the next set, that's just something generic. You can just do it right. You can slap the cat tag onto something, and it can be meaningful, it can be not, depending on how the meta plays out. But attaching that cat tag isn't, that tough to do because cats are a common generic thing. But if you're looking to print cultists from a lore perspective, they probably have to be some kind of humanoid thing. They probably have to be attached to some kind of occulty / religious type thing. And it's tough to get that into every set, right? If you're looking at the Nico set that was all animals and whatnot, probably a stretch to get a cat in there. But on the flip side, if we have some real occulty type set with a bunch of like libraries and cultists and shit, there's not a big surprise if maybe there's a cat hanging out in the library, right? And so it's kind of hard to flip the two. Easy to get cats in, not hard. It's not easy to get cultists in. And so, well, I think Varys is a little overtuned, Kayn, and probably a safe space. At the end of the day, just go ahead and get rid of them. I think that's completely fine. And then if there are lingering cultist cards, then that doesn't really hurt anything too much. But the ones that really strike me as kind of painful are Bard and Aatrox, in the sense that if you're cutting all of the linear strategies, then what are the new players supposed to kind of grasp onto? And these are two champions that have that linear thing tied in and what feels like a comfortable and safe way to me. And so if you're a new player and you pick up Aatrox, how do you build an Aatrox deck, right? Well, you're limited to the 10 Darkened Equipment and Zolani, and then when you get to looking at those cards that you can play, you can say, oh, it's an equipment. I put the equipment on the unit and I attack. I want to do attacky stuff, or I want to do strike stuff, right? It's very easy to kind of figure out what you want to do with your Aatrox deck, and then you're off to the races. Same thing could be said about Bard, right? How do I get these chimes going? I put more chime cards into my deck. And so I feel like there has to be some point to where you have a beginner-friendly mechanic out and about and running around. But what is that going to be? And so it's unfortunate for me to see these go. Like Bard, Bard is tough in the sense that he has the RNG component tied into him. And so removing him from the game, probably not that bad. But I think it's kind of odd that he ties in with like boons. Like if you remove Bard, are you also removing boons? Or are you just removing chimes? Or are you just removing Bard? And it seems like it's just Bard. We can take a quick side peek down here and see Bird is going, but none of the other chime cards are. Like Bard's flip card is still within the game. And so no harm, no foul there. But it is interesting with Aatrox that Aatrox is being pulled out, but the Darken equipment are still in. You don't see the Darken Bandle post in Bandle City. You don't see the Darken helmet in Bilgewater. You don't see the Aegis. I know I'm going to get Demacia, right? We scroll down to Demacia. Of course I'm going to get it. But all of the Darken equipment are still in the game, but Aatrox is gone, which is kind of odd and strange to me. But nonetheless, I feel like this is a reasonable set of champions to axe. From power level concerns with Ryze and Varys, from oops, I'm in every best of 3 lineup from Kayn and Aatrox, and then the RNG component to Bard. Probably fine to see all of these go. And then while I will be sad to have Aatrox gone, he's been one of my favorite champions, I think it's okay at the end of the day. And so we have Bandle City. I think they have 3 topics to talk about. The first 2 are very quick. The third one is going to be very long-winded. And so first and foremost, Fizz. Good riddance, be gone. Fizz should have been gutted in the last rotation. I can only believe the only reason Fizz stuck around was to bolster the numbers of Bandle City cards. And so like when we mentioned darkness and say like, why did these darkness cards sit around while half of the darkness cards were taken out? Well, maybe they needed just to have enough physical Targon cards within the game so the set numbers would be balanced. Like that's the only reasoning I can believe as to why Fizz is still in the game, or Fizz sold a lot of skins, but if the game was monetarily unsuccessful, that can't be valid in any way, shape, or form. And so, good riddance, be gone. Fizz is a horribly I don't want to say horribly designed card, but he's been a horrible scourge upon constructed formats, be it in elusives, be it with Battle Furies, be it with Yumis, be it with Siren Song. There has not been a fun and interactive Fizz deck throughout the entirety of the game. Glad to see you go. Otherwise, with part 2, the darkness mechanic is being lifted. We see a lot of those cards being taken out. Vagar, Robemaker, Dark Bulb Epiclite, Twisted Catalyzer, all gone because they're darkness cards. I assume if we scroll down to Shadow Isles, the other darkness cards are going to be gone as well. And so to me, the number 3 thing, the big thing with Bandle City is what is their faction identity, right? And so as we saw the last rotation come about, the Riot team took big strides in terms of really making it cohesive as to what a faction was good at. We saw a lot of kind of swaps with cards as to where, say, Calling Strike and Noxus became Shadow Isles Calling Strike and Shadow Isles. And so you saw a lot of other changes in terms of, say, okay, what do removal spells look like within each of the factions? You have Noxus and Demacia that are good at doing strikes. You have Shadow Isles that's good at big removals. You have the Freylord removal as kind of like AoEs like Avalanche or Frostbites, but they don't directly get a removal spell like Vengeance, is really kind of defined what the factions were supposed to be good at. And what it seemed like in terms of removal spells, Bandle City was good at was 1 damage pings or small pings, right? You had Pokey Stick, you had things like Group Shot, you had Pytos. That was really kind of like the defining flavors of what the Bandle City removal suite looked like. And so it's kind of weird to me as we scroll down in the removal and we see things like Group Shot removed, and we see things like Drop the Bomb removed. And I know that Lord Broadmane is in the list, right? If we search for Broadmane out here within the list of cards, he's not in the upcoming set, but he's not in this picture either. But Lord Broadmane was kind of in that same vein, right, as to where he came down and dealt a small amount of damage to a unit. That seemed to be like what Bandle City was good at, and it seems like that stuff is kind of going away now, which is fine, but where are they going? Kind of the same deal applies with the rest of the Bandle City stuff. It seemed like Bandle City was good at generating cards. You would see it in the manifest mechanic. So Conchologist is out here generating cards, right? Or you would see it in things like the Bandle Tree, generating other multi-faction units, or even cards down here like Trinket Trade, which manifests an Otterpuss or something else from the other cards of the faction. And so that seemed like one of the things that Bandle City was supposed to be good at. It doesn't seem like they're getting a ton of stuff added in with it. Now, I guess from here, it's not being omitted, right? Seeing the Bandle Tellstones go is a bit strange. Are all the Tellstones going? Hang on. Bilgewater, Tellstones. Oh, I bet they all are going. Okay. Demacia, Tellstones. Okay. So they aren't just taking away the manifest mechanic out of Bandle City. They're just taking away all of the Tellstones. But nonetheless, that has been one of their big things. But like, what else do they do? What else does Bandle City really do? It's kind of tough to say. I don't feel like they've really hashed out what that Bandle City identity is supposed to be, or they have hashed it out, but they haven't executed on it. And that kind of ties into what I think looks kind of miserable in terms of the rotation. If we shield your eyes, I'm about to scroll, and it seems to scroll white a lot of times. There we go. We're getting some of that white stuff shining on the screen. Okay, we're here. And so, like when I ask myself, what is the question that Bandle City is good at, you typically attach a verb to it, right? So you say, Bandle City is good at 1 damage pings. Bandle City is good at generating cards. Bandle City is good at this. Bandle City is good at that. You aren't describing a specific type of unit, but that's what's about to come into the game, right? If we take a look at the Bandle City editions that we're going to be seeing, it's all Yordles. And while I think that that's good mechanically, I feel like Yordles was close to popping off at the end of the last standard season. We played a ton of Yordles in the Champion Draft Series. We're about to see the Yordles come back. 10 of the 14 cards here are Yordles, right? Lulu, Inventive Chemist, Yordle Newbie, Yordle Smith, Hothead, that's 5, Wizard, Ember Monk, Scholarly Climber, Risu, Mechacaster, that's 10. 10 of the 14 cards are Yordles. And so it's very interesting that that's what they're adding in. Because what you say, what is Bandle City good at? Yordles. Like, that doesn't make a ton of sense to me. And so I'm really kind of curious where they're going with this in terms of solidifying what Bandle City is meant to be doing, because they're just adding a bunch of units within the faction, right? And it's not like we're even saying, okay, we're adding in units that can give vulnerable like Shurima does. We're adding in a bunch of challengers like Demacia does, or we're adding in a bunch of overwhelms like Noxus and Freylord does. It's like we're just adding in all these rando Yordles that don't really have any cohesive mechanics between them. And so I don't know if this is really considered like a hit or a miss, but it just feels very strange to me in that we're getting from the space of where Yordles were defined by elusives to where Yordles are going to be, or I'm sorry, Bandle City is in the space of being defined by elusives to now Bandle City is in the space of being defined by Yordles. And it just like thematically doesn't make sense to me. It's fine that the creatures are predominantly within the faction, but it doesn't tell me what Bandle City is good at. It's like saying Bandle City is good at cat. Or right, or Bandle City is good at dog. That doesn't really make sense to put forth in a sentence. And so I'm curious to see how it goes. I am glad to see a lot of these cards come back. There are a lot of combat-centric favorites that I like Lulu and Yordle Smith. Stress defense is always a interesting combat trick in shutting down OTKs. Loping Telescope has been a problem value card from time on end, and so I'm very interested in seeing some of these cards come in. There is a little flavor of worry in here, seeing things like Flame Spitter turn up, but I'm curious to see how the faction goes. And so it's interesting in that sense. It's, where are they going? What are they going to be doing? I can't really define. And so the last kind of things I think I have to say with Bandle City are I thought that they were just going to kind of cut out some of the garbage, right? As you commonly will hear in the space of Reddit of why do they put bad cards in a card game, and everything is relative, right? And so I remember reading from Mark Rosewater that in any given standard format, only like 30% of the cards were going to be relevant. And so it didn't matter how big the set was, that 30% kind of held across all of the formats. So if you looked at Vintage, to where you could play the full like 20,000 cards of Magic, something like 30% of the cards were relevant. If you looked at something like One Set Block Constructed, only like 30% of the cards were relevant, and that also tied over to stuff like Sealed, as to where you were forced to play this very small collection of cards, still only like 30% of the cards were relevant. And so you're never going to get in that space to where every card is relevant to Constructed, but I thought that they were just going to get rid of the complete like garbagey nonsense, right? Seeing things like Trixie Tentacles go makes sense to me. Seeing things like Fey A go makes sense to me. No one ever really attempted to play these cards. Arguably the worst card ever made in the paper tree. This one can go. But as we were down in that bottom kind of space where the Bandle City cards coming in was, I saw that Entrapment was in here. And I guess you could make an argument for Entrapment being some kind of playable. But man, that really strikes me as being one of the worst in the game. And so I think that that's a good place to finish it off, with calling out the Bandle City card as being the new worst one in the game. But whew, that's a lot to talk about, a lot to digest, a lot to bring in. Again, we're going to be covering these factions over the course of the next week. So we'll do Bilgewater and Demacia tomorrow. I'm sure we'll just talk about scouts the whole time. Again, I'm not certain about the spoiler cadence for what's going to be coming up. I assume they'll do some kind of spoiler season, but who knows at this point. I really have no faith in any kind of regular cadence coming out of Riot ever again. And so we'll see with that, and we'll be here for the remainder of the month, if you will. And so nonetheless, that is going to do it. So hope everyone enjoyed the video. Hope you maybe learned a thing or two along the way. You had a good time watching. This is Bustin' Weed. Thank you for being here.